Nancy, thank you for taking the time. I'm so excited you're here.
I'm so excited to be here and I'm excited to see your face even though they won't see it. They won't see us on the podcast.
Well, it's true, but suffice to say, you're rocking it. So I just I adore you. I adore the work you're doing in the world. It is so freaking important, especially right now. And so I'm hoping you will recap with our listeners sort of your origin story and how you came to be the person who's, writing these incredible books and coaching women and literally changing lives. But that's not where it started for you.
Definitely not where it started. It started with me being, a champion people pleaser, peacekeeper, conflict avoider, not rock the boater. Uh, I prided myself on being boundaryless because I thought that doing everything for everyone whenever they needed it was what made me exceptional. And I spent much of my life chasing all the external gold stars. And I was really a powerhouse at work. I was the event director at Hay House for 12 years, traveling the world with the greatest minds in the fields of self empowerment and wellness and motivation and inspiration, all the things. And, I always say I had a backstage pass and a front row seat to all the teachings. But the teachings didn't really land in me until I was in my own crisis.
Mm.
And my own crisis arrived in the version of my marriage blowing up. So, 18 years of marriage, I had spent my whole life really living by the motto of never let them see you sweat. And I was projecting this image of perfection to the world and giving people a very specific lens that I wanted them to see me through so I could manage their perception of me. And I didn't want anyone to know what was going on behind closed doors. And really, ultimately, I didn't want to know what was going on behind closed doors. And so, all the gory details are in all of my books, but the sort of bottom line is I arrived home from one of my events at Hay House to discover that my then husband, had read my journals, and he had discovered that I had had an affair 8 years prior, and it took about 2 years for me to finally leave the marriage because I was so engrossed in making it work, not letting anyone else know this about me. There was a lot of shame, there was a lot of fear. He also was a very rageful and threatening person. So he had threatened to expose me, the scarlet letter, the whole thing. And so what really happened was I was in a position to take a deep look at myself. Was I willing to admit to myself what I already knew was true? Was I willing to take a stand for myself instead of trying to save the marriage or save face? And ultimately, that was what led me to really begin doing the deep work on myself. And my dear friend, Debbie Ford, who is no longer with us,
Mm-hmm.
uh, invited me to put my ass in the chair at an event that I would normally produce. And so she said, tell your staff they're running the event and you are doing the work. And that was really a
Mm.
great gift and a life changing weekend for me because it was really the first time I was willing to be very honest with myself. And from there, I decided to go through her year-long life coach training and certification program and become a coach. Not that I ever wanted to be a coach. My job at Hay House was my dream job. I never thought I
Mm.
would leave my job. I thought I would die in that job. But over time, I recognized that I was no longer the person I was when I had started that program. And I really felt my calling to help other people get free. So I was still in my job at Hay House. I did the whole side hustle thing. I started building my coaching business. I self published my first two books while I was still in my job there. And then ultimately left my job there, really went off on my own in my coaching, and have since published three more books with Hay House. And my sixth book is coming out with Hay House this fall. So it's it's kind of, for me, looking back, it was saying yes to the right things in the right moment and being willing to take risks and being willing to really get to know myself on the deepest level.
That is the brave work. I'm so glad you touched on this. I do a lot of work with women and girls as well, and there's an epidemic of women
Hmm.
saying yes to things they should be saying no to, and saying
Yes.
no to things they should be saying yes to. But you talked about not wanting to admit what was true for you. What was underneath that? What was true for you that you were burying so deeply?
It's very easy to, hindsight's 2020. So looking back from here, I can sort of say, if present day me was back there, I would be able to say, I don't want to be married, or, this isn't working for me, or what, any version of that. But I wasn't able to do that back then. So I did something that, I often say that the act of having an affair and writing it down in my journal was setting a bomb to detonate 8 years later when it actually did.
Mm.
And so if if my ex-husband had not read my journals, I can assure you I would still be there.
Wow.
I can assure you that the honestly, the greatest thing that could have happened was him reading those journals, so that I was really catapulted, into a catalytic act. I talk a lot about rocking your own foundation before it rocks you and not waiting for a crisis, because so many of us think we have to wait for a crisis, or we don't make a move until we're in the crisis.
Yeah.
And the truth is, we can actually avoid the crisis. We can preempt the crisis
Right.
by taking action sooner.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a situation where things are so wrong there is no other option but to act.
That's right.
You were talking about the silence, so and just when I heard you say those out loud words, if he hadn't seen it, I'd still be married. And I'm looking at this incredible, vibrant, alive person who has this tapestry of teaching and experience and self-expression and awareness, and is now sharing that with other people and changing people's lives. And I think to myself, how many other people right now are doing exactly that? And what is the
Yes.
cost of that underneath the just muddling through?
And that's really the thing. We have this idea that the goal of relating, of any kind of relationship, is harmony at all cost. And I'm here to tell you that harmony at all cost comes at a very high cost. It
Mm.
comes at a very high cost, to us. And so that was really the beginning of my understanding. Like I said a few moments ago, I thought my boundarylessness was what made me exceptional at my job. And I was a powerhouse at work, and I was quiet as a mouse at home because I didn't want to poke the tiger, poke the bear. I didn't want the rage to be coming at me. And so it was a really like 180-degree reorientation to recognizing, I have needs. My needs are important. And to be able to stop attaching my worth and value to what I did and achieved and produced,
Mm.
and
Mm.
to really get clear on what's okay and not okay for me, so that I can live in the way that feels best for me. And we were talking a little bit before we started recording. I really want to support people to see that boundaries are expansive. Most people look at boundaries as being restrictive or constrictive or depriving. And I really look at boundaries as the way that we are carefully choosing and consciously curating the content of our own lives.
So powerful, so powerful. Well, it's interesting you say that, right? So I just want to unpack that for a second,
Yeah.
because I know, like, if you go back historically, we as human beings are wired to want to belong, to want to fit in, to want to be part of the pack, right? And society tells us also, especially as women, those millions of grains of sand, don't be too much, don't be too loud, don't be too opinionated, you have to be nice, right? And nice means putting everybody else before yourself. And I see this so often, as I know you do as well, and it's just these people are suffering in silence and silos. What
Yeah.
does a no feel like in your body when your head is telling you you're doing all the right things?
I love this question. So for me, the first thing I'll say is that when a direct request comes in, most people feel that someone else's urgency needs to be theirs. So when a direct request comes in, if I'm ready to say no, I say no. And if I'm not ready to say no, I will say, I'll get back to you tomorrow. So I at least build in the pause for me to consider the yes or the no. And what I have learned is that if I if my knee jerk yes is coming from obligation, responsibility, duty, I don't want someone to be mad, I don't want someone to be disappointed, I want to be the hero. If my yes is coming from any of those places, it's actually a no.
Mm.
So no needs to only come from desire. I want to do this. So someone else wanting to have lunch with me is not a reason for me to say yes unless I want to say yes because I have a desire. And so what it fe- I can I it's for me my feeling place in my body is my upper arms. I know
Oh,
people have different places: throat, belly, solar plexus. My upper arms tell me everything I need to know.
wow.
And so I will feel it in my body because I've had enough experience of saying yes and then looking at that date on the calendar thinking, how the hell am I going to get out of this? Why the hell did I say yes? And I will honestly tell you that never, it doesn't even exist in my life anymore.
That's so interesting. I've heard people, like you said, say that they feel it in their gut or they feel it in their tension in the shoulders. What does it feel like in your arms? This is the first time I'm hearing that that's your go-to place.
Okay, it's kind of a strange explanation I have, but this is what it feels like. It feels like a piece of barbed wire coming around me from the back, joining in the front, and then twisting like a twisty that you would have on a plastic bag.
Interesting.
And I
Did you feel
feel
that before when you were in your marriage? Did you feel that too? Or did you just become aware of what that was and what it meant later?
so here's the thing, I didn't feel anything at
Oh,
that time because what I now know is the only way I could stay in an abusive marriage was to block out any feeling. And what happens is we think we can block out the bad only. But what I've learned, and I kind of like the metaphor I use is like the faucets in the kitchen or the bathroom. Like bathroom faucets are usually separate, hot and cold, but the kitchen is one.
right,
And
right.
you can't just turn off one hot or cold. If you turn the water off, you turn the water off. And so the same is with, you know, our feelings. Like we can't just tune out or turn off the bad. What ends up happening is we also turn off and tune out the good.
Hmm.
So I was really living in a place almost like, I want to say almost like above feeling. Like I wasn't dropped into any feeling. I was just operating in this place of efficiency and execution and doing and, you know, like ambition on steroids.
Well, it probably speaks to why you were so good at what you did because that's where you were getting your cup filled. It's like this is where I
Exactly.
get to excel. This is where I get the accolades. This is where it's
Exactly.
safe for me to fully express in the way that they want me to express. They want me to be
Right.
exceptional because it means the company's exceptional. It means that
Right.
the events are exceptional. So when you finally started speaking your truth, I just think that's so powerful. Again, just reflecting on if he had not read that journal, where might you be now? And also the ripple effect. I'm just such a ripple effect girl. Like the people that you're serving and helping now in such profound ways, like where would they be?
I
You were
know. I
talking
think about it
about
all the time.
right? Right. Like yeah, and it's just it's never one grain of sand. It's those again those informings, those noticings, those not quite good enough, and they get stored in your body. And the reason I actually called this show the Yes Effect is because the Yes Effect to me is that moment when your body tells you the truth.
Hmm.
But we are so attuned to those millions of grains of sand. It's like a woman specifically will hear, oh, that's like, yes, that's a yes for me. But in a nanosecond, all of those grains of sand come falling down and she finds herself on a beach and she doesn't even realize that those grains of sand do not belong to her.
Right. Yeah. And you said something before, about this whole thing of, especially as women, don't shine too bright, don't be too loud, don't be too big for your britches, any of these kinds of things that have made us sort of shut down. And, you know, you didn't say this, but I know it's underneath what you were saying also, is this whole concept of selfishness.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of my favorite things to talk about because I do see, especially women, wanting to deflect attention off of them in that way. And because the
I just got goosebumps.
because the culture has given selfish a bad rap, we pride ourselves on being selfless. And what happens in selfless, it's right there in the word, like we disappear. So it's not about being one or the other. It's about being selfless and selfish. And recognizing that selfish is not inherently bad. So I often look at selfish, self care, and self love as being three sisters whose job it is to support us in honoring ourselves. And this is a really big stretch for those of us who have lived most of our lives other referenced. You know,
Yes.
knowing knowing only where we are based on someone else and checking everyone else's temperature first.
Yeah.
And
To see how we measure up and are we okay? Are we
exactly.
acceptable
Right.
as general human beings?
Exactly. And let me know your mood. Like, let me wait till I see your mood to know how I should respond or how I should be. And this is another version of packaging ourselves to be digestible to everyone else around us. And we have these antenna, that go right out to what do they think? What do they need? What do they want? What do they feel? Instead of what do I think? What do I need? What do I want? What do I feel? I mean, one of the things I notice over and over again consistently in my Levin Life Coach Academy training program is you know, seeing the shift occur from being other referenced and outward focused to actually being able to be with, you know, I'm now willing to consider my own needs at least as much as I'm considering the needs of others. Like that has to be the baseline that we start at.
What does the process look like or feel like for you to be able to watch the unlocking of these people in your training programs? Because again, we are taught this from the time we are so little that it becomes, you talked about the antenna, that becomes innate in our ability to disappear or to morph or to camouflage or to fit in. And to be able to first of all have the ability to tune and say, is this a yes or is this a no from here, or how do I actually feel about that? Because we are so attuned to not make anybody mad or not make waves. What does that process look like for the people that you work with in your coaching program when you start to unravel and uncover that? I imagine there's probably a lot of tears.
There's a lot of tears. There's a lot of, I would even say, some resistance at first, thinking that it's impossible. And then this sort of glorious, witnessing of the shift happening. Because most of us think in terms of either or. We're all about the binary. It's like either this or that.
Right.
And I'm really inviting in the both and. So if I say, are you willing to give yourself permission to consider your own needs at least as much as you consider the needs of others? Then are you willing to give yourself permission to consider your needs even more than the needs of others? And
I
then
bet
the
that
real
incites a recoil.
boundary ninja move is, are you willing to give yourself permission to consider your needs first before you consider the needs of others? Now, nowhere in here have I said don't consider the needs of others, but it's what we hear. And then we get constricted because we think, how am I going to do this? And I'm not in any way talking about being careless with others or not respecting others' wishes or not attuning to others at all, but attuning to yourself first. And this can start on the smallest level, which sounds so silly to even talk about, but I see this as prevalent. If I say, "Hey, let's go out to dinner. Where do you want to go?" The most common response is,
Well, where do you want to go?
exactly. Exactly. And so even just starting from the place of, instead of saying, where do you want to go? Take a beat and really check in. Huh? Do I want sushi? Do I want spaghetti? Do I want, what do I want? And offer it. And for all I know, you're allergic to fish, so you can't go for sushi. But at least I've named a desire and have a
Mm,
request instead of just defaulting to
yeah,
what I think is going to keep the peace.
right. It's like somebody's asking you a direct question to which you know the answer, yet we
That's
refuse
right.
to answer it.
Exactly. And what I'll tell you is also, when students start out in my coaching program, it's really fascinating to me to ask a direct question. And the answer that I'm looking for begins with I. And yet the answer that I receive begins with, he, she, they, someone else, my mother, because the person can't even access what's true for them outside of being in reference to someone else.
Crazy. It's crazy. So, do you have, and maybe you can't share the details, but do you have uh, an example of somebody who's just rocked your socks when they came to you, started working with you, and then the transformation that they experienced? And again, like just the ripple effect of who they become better in the world for themselves, for other people, for the global community.
Yeah, I mean, oh my God, there's so many. And what I really see more than anything is the, how do I want to say this? Is the confidence and courage that gets gained by really anchoring into self.
Mm,
So, whether it's someone who comes and wants to leave a corporate job, and do some and make a switch, which is as big as leaving a marriage sometimes, in certain instances. And, any big change someone wants to make, it has to first begin with the telling the truth piece, and also recognizing that it's not so much about should I stay or should I go. It's really about, how can I live into the fullness of myself?
mm,
Can can I live into the fullness of myself here or not? And then it doesn't become about the other person or about the job or about the move or about any of it. It's, what do I need to do so that I can actually fully expand my own life? And that's what I keep seeing. So I mean, I I could give you examples of, people who ended up going on to write books about things they never thought they would write about, or left marriages, or stayed in marriages, or changed careers, or were resistant through the entire training program right up into the end, and then now are powerhouse coaches. I mean, it's been, everyone has their very own personal journey, because one of the things that I do in the program is they have to really go through their own process first, so that they are ultimately going to coach from the scar and not the wound. you know
Yes, yes.
yeah.
Absolutely. Well, it's interesting to me to look at the cost of staying silent,
Yes.
and sometimes your comfort zone is the most uncomfortable place, but once you start uncovering what that truth is, you talked about something a little bit ago, and you were talking about your ex-husband, and talking about him saying that he was going to publicly out you, and the Scarlet Letter, and you talked about your silence. I don't know if you've seen the movie 8 Mile with Eminem,
Hmm.
but
Yeah,
at
I
the
mean, a long
end,
time ago, but yes.
but I love that movie for this reason. I'm going to tie it back to
Yeah.
what you were talking about. So he's in this rap battle at the end of the movie, and he's the underdog, and he's the white kid in a club where he's not super welcome, and his life is absolutely a dumpster fire. And
Yeah.
at the end, he's doing this rap battle, and he's just like this white kid who lives in the trailer park, and he goes first, and he completely, in this genius array of rhyme, outs himself about all of those things. So when it's the other person's turn, he literally has nothing to say. He was stuttering and stammering, and what he said about himself was true and powerful and raw and beautiful. And it's the idea that people hear his story but feel theirs, because struggle is the connective tissue between human beings. What
Amen.
did it look like for you when you finally broke your silence?
Oh, I love this question. So, we were talking about my bestie Kelly a little earlier before we started recording. So
Kelly Notaris,
she,
yes.
Kelly Notaris, she edited my book, Jump and Your Life Will Appear. And we were working together on the outline. And I will never forget, we sat together, and we were going to use my own life story as the through line. And we had already identified the steps of the process. And now we needed to add in a piece of my story in each of the chapters. So, chapter 1 is admit to yourself what you already know. And
Mm.
Kelly said, great, the story we're going to weave into chapter 1 is the story about your affair. And I said, oh, no, 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 no. We are not telling that story. I'm not putting that in a book. I am not, no.
You're
And
like,
she just,
I have a prettier option for that chapter that I
right,
mapped out, and she's like, no, thank you.
right. And at the time we lived like literally next door. So we were sitting together on my deck. She closed her laptop and said, when you are ready to tell that story, we will return to this book.
Wow.
And so I then went through a process of being able to ultimately look the shame I was feeling in the eye, get in right relationship with myself. I started sharing it on stage because I was already speaking at that point.
Wow.
And then I was ready to put it in the book. So what I began to discover was, first of all, the people I feared revealing my truth to the most were the ones who rallied around me the fiercest.
Oh.
And I felt like they created a scaffolding for me to rebuild inside of. And and I really believe this, if we do our own work, so like I said, I did the work to dissolve the shame. I no longer had Velcro for anyone else's judgment of me to stick. Because I remember being on stage at an event, and it was actually the first time I ever shared about the affair from stage. But I didn't share about it in my talk. but I had been doing the work and I knew that it was coming. I didn't share about it in my talk, but in the Q&A, a man asked me what was in the journals, because I only referred to my ex-husband reading the journals and that was the catalyst to leaving the marriage. And he said, what was in the journals? And it was like, shit or get off the pot, Nance.
Yes.
Like, this is your chance. And I said, he read that I had an affair 8 years prior. And the man said, I'm so glad that you didn't share that earlier, because I would have lost the ability to focus and listen to your story. I would have been fixated on that. And he said, so I'm really glad that you shared it, but not sooner. And I thought, like, that was interesting data. And I also recognized in me that, like, it didn't land on me because I was clean. So it couldn't stick.
In your coaching program, do you go through the process of helping people get clean so that it doesn't stick? Because I know, like, there have been topics in my life where I'm like, I feel like I have some material around this, and I think about it and I talk about it, I cry it out and stuff, and I still have it.
Yeah.
What does that process look like?
Yeah. So part of it is, like I was saying before, having the students go through an experience of being coached so that they are able to work on their own stuff, and so that they're able to see, different things that they had not been able to see. So they get coached through the very model that they are first getting certified in, and they actually go through that model 3 times in the course of the training. So they're getting to revisit these pieces over and over and take them to a deeper layer. And the goal is to actually be able to, in a session with a client, not be re-traumatized, not be reactivated, not be re-triggered. And that if something comes up that is sort of sparking inside of you, to really know how to sort of put that aside for now, stay present, stay focused, and after the session, what is my work here to continue doing? Because we're always going to be continuing to do our work.
So powerful. And it's such an immersive way to be able to experience because you help coaches coach.
That's right.
So to be able to have done the work on yourself, it's almost like you have earned the right to talk about, teach about, and guide somebody through the journey of doing their ugly work. It's kind of like the analogy I always say, I'm this kind of friend. So if you're in a bad spot and you're down in the trench of life, I am not the friend that will stand on the precipice of the trench and look down at you and go, it's going to be okay, Nancy. You're going to be okay. We're going to rally through this. I am the person who's going to get in that freaking trench with you.
Yep.
We're going to lock arms, and I might drag you by your hair or kick or scream or whatever, but I'm not staying, and neither are you.
Right.
And it's kind of like, when you have done the work and when you've excavated all of your ugly, and you know what that feels like, to feel that shame and to want more than anything to not say the brave, true thing, but it's the thing that also emancipates you and sets you free.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, like you were saying before, that about, I say it like we find ourselves in each other's stories, because there are the connective tissues, there are the through lines. The content may not be exactly the same, but the feelings are,
Right.
and we can find ourselves in that. And that's actually one of the greatest, I want to almost say, like, selling points, for each coach coaching the way that they do. I know that I draw people toward me because they find themselves in something that I am sharing. And that, everyone has their own version of it. Everyone has their own, their own stuff that someone's going to feel magnetized to. And so, in my program, the first coaching model of mine that they're trained in is called Reinvention coaching. And it's a 2-month program. So it's 8 sessions, and it's actually the basis of the new book I was talking about, The Art of Change, which is really a guided journal where I bring in the 8 dimensions of reinvention. And this book is the first book I've written after I wrote the coaching curriculum first. My other books, I wrote the books first and then created the coaching curriculum out of them. So it was really cool to do it differently this time. But like I said, they go through the reinvention coaching, basically 3 times before certification. And so they're able to continue uncovering everything from, vision to shadow beliefs to underlying commitments to incompletions,
Yes.
to all these, different pieces that ultimately land them in this place of wanting to allow themselves to be visible. And it's very powerful to watch this unfold, and it all comes back to what I call my transformation equation, which is change equals vision plus choice plus action. So
Mm.
if we want to make a change, we need to have the vision of where we want to go, what we want to be, what it looks like, and then every choice and every action only does one of two things: serves the vision or sabotages the vision.
Mm. So
So
simple.
so simple. So if we get really clear on the vision that we're holding, I want to buy a house, choice and action. Do I buy the shoes? Do I not buy the shoes? Whatever. I want to lose 10 pounds. Do I eat the cookies? Do I not eat the cookies? Whatever. It really can come down to something that simple, of recognizing that every single choice we make has power in it. And I always look at it like, our present moment choice predicts our future. If we want to know what our future is going to look like, all we have to look at are the choices we're making right now. Our present moment choices are the crystal ball we're looking for.
Mm. So powerful. I do a lot of my life's work around the concept of believe, belong, become.
Mm.
And I loved what you were saying about the art of change and your philosophy and your strategies on how to move people through change. One of the things that I think is also important to add to that for people who want to make a change is when you are looking at the thing you want to be, do, have, become. Oftentimes we will say, "But that's not who I am." And what we fail to realize that everything is temporary. Life itself is temporary. We're only ever moving through a something, and you're only ever on your way to becoming something. So yes, I mean, for those who get that moment where they're like, "Oh, I'd love to X, Y, and Z," uh, it's also equally as important to remember that you can become the person who does that. You can become the person who, and maybe your circumstances are different, and the actions you have to take might not be fair or equal or the same as somebody else like you. But to your point, it's just, does this serve or sabotage?
Yeah, and then, also to sort of build on what you're sharing about, and I sort of mentioned it before when we were talking about selfish, and I said that we have the capacity to be both selfish and selfless. These disowned qualities, these parts of us that we've pushed away, whether they're perceived as negative or positive, because we often also push away the parts of us that we just don't think we are, but think other people are. So, to your point, I might look at someone and think, I want to be creative like they are, or I want to be generous like they are, or I want to be whatever. And the truth is, all of that exists within me. It's just dormant. And so, on the way to becoming, it's also reintegrating these qualities in ourselves that we have disowned and projected out onto others, including the light and positive qualities that we can step into.
Hmm. It's so funny. Sometimes it just starts with holding a mirror up and showing somebody something they forgot.
That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely true.
I could talk to you literally for hours.
I feel like the same.
I couldn't love you more. You're an
Oh,
absolute light in this world when we so desperately need you and more people like you. So first of all, thank you for helping to create more people like you. If people are looking to coach with you, or if people are looking to reach out to you online, what is the best and easiest way for them to get a hold of you?
my website is nancylevin.com. Everything is there.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, my dear heart, for stopping by
Thank
and
you.
for
Thank you.
sharing
Thank you.
your heart
Thank
with us.
you.